Hey guys, so if you finish this section or if you're at this video now, that means you finished the nitrogen and the carbon cycle section. So let's go over the questions real quick so that you guys can see my thinking and hopefully your thinking can align with it. So the first question up says, during which step is nitrogen taken out of the air and placed into the ground? So we have 5 different options here. And what we need to understand in order to be able to answer this is what are the steps of the nitrogen cycle? So let's go over here. In the nitrogen cycle, we have 5 steps: nitrogen fixation, nitrification, assimilation, ammonification, and denitrification. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this picture. All right, so this is a picture of the nitrogen cycle. And the main thing that I want you to see is that we can actually narrow down the nitrogen cycle into about 3 steps with 2 side quests. 3 steps with 2 side quests. So nitrogen fixation is the process of getting the nitrogen from the air into the ground. From there, it's going to go through a process known as, my bad, nitrification. It's going to go through a process known as nitrification. It's going to be going through the bottom until eventually it gets back to this point where it's going to go through denitrification and it's going to go back into the air. So this is a circle from nitrogen fixation into the ground. Nitrification is going to change it a couple times, and then denitrification to put it back into the air. Now, I mentioned 2 side quests. The first side quest is called assimilation. And in that process, we take some of that nitrogen that's in the ground, give it to plants, and then eventually it'll go from the plants into animals. The second side quest is known as ammonification, where poop goes into the ground or dead matter can go into the ground and it returns nitrogen back into the ground. But again, those are side quests. Those are side things that go on. They do happen, but if you want to make it a perfect circle, just look at nitrogen fixation, nitrification, and then denitrification. Once you have that perfect circle done, then you can start adding assimilation and ammonification into the mix. Because all they do is they just take a side detour for the nitrogen and then they bring it back into the ground. They take a side detour out and then bring it back into the ground. So if we're taking nitrogen out of the air and putting it into the ground, then this would be known as nitrogen fixation. Should be our very first answer, A. Now, next one. During which step is nitrogen taken out of the ground and returned back to the air? So we go back over here. We can see that we had nitrogen fixation. It went through nitrification where it got changed a couple times. And then denitrification is when it gets from the ground back into the air. So in this case, our answer would have been D for this one. Now, here we go. For this section, burning fossil fuels contributes to the increase in carbon release into the atmosphere. What is one method in which everyday people contribute to the release of carbon back into the day? All right, so burning fossil fuels contributes to that. Do we have a method of burning fossil fuels every single day? The answer is yes, we do. Because many, if not most people, either have a vehicle or they take some kind of public transportation every single day. So through burning gas in vehicles, we contribute to releasing carbon back into the air every single day. Now, next section. If every day people wanted for global warming to stop, what is one thing they could do to assist with that? What is one thing they could do? So we don't want global warming anymore. So something that we could do to stop that. So on the last question, we mentioned how every day we drive cars. So some of the things that we could start doing is maybe we should carpool. Maybe we should take public transportation because there's a lot of us we need to get around. So those things would help. Maybe we could burn less fossil fuels by doing other things, like maybe not needing so many products. These are just simple things that we could do that would help stop global warming. And the way we're helping stop it is by not using so much carbon. Every time we release carbon into the air, we increase global warming because the carbon ends up trapping the heat into the planet. And we don't want that. So by reducing our use of carbon, we can help stop global warming. The idea behind this is how we can help reduce the use of carbon. That's what we're trying to think of. And I gave you some ideas on riding buses, sharing cars, doing things like that. Now, last 3 questions. What is photosynthesis and what is its role in the carbon cycle? So if we go over here, here's the carbon cycle, and here's a picture of it. So photosynthesis is going to be this process right here. And all that is taking carbon out of the air using sunlight. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the carbon out of the air and convert it into sugar. We're converting it into sugar. We're converting it into energy. So the photosynthesis is the process of taking carbon out of the air and making sugar out of it. And only plants are able to do photosynthesis. Only plants are able to do photosynthesis. So that is what it is. The answer for that first one is photosynthesis is the process of taking carbon out of the air and converting it into sugar. By doing that, we make it accessible for all other organisms. Now, what is cellular respiration and what is its role in the carbon cycle? So cellular respiration, what it is breaking the sugar for energy. Its role in the carbon cycle is to release the carbon back into the air. So cellular respiration is breaking that sugar that we made in order to release energy, and it's going to release the carbon back into the air. And that's how we have a full loop. And the organisms that can do that are plants and animals. So plants are able to do photosynthesis because they can take the carbon in and make it into sugar. Then they do cellular respiration to break that same sugar, release the carbon back out, and they have energy for themselves. Animals cannot do photosynthesis, but what they can do is eat plants. And when they eat those plants, they get those sugars. And then in their bodies, they go through cellular respiration, where they break the sugars, they release energy, and then they release the carbon back into the air. And the way we do that is by breathing out. Now, the last questions. Forests are known as carbon sinks because they store carbon. What happens to their stored carbon when the forest is removed? So, forests store carbon, but if we remove the forest, there's nothing to store the carbon anymore, which is a bad thing. We need something there to be able to store the carbon so that we have a place to put it, because otherwise there'd be too much carbon in the air. And so removing the forest in any shape, way, or form is a bad thing because we release the carbon back into the atmosphere and we make the planet hotter. So that also includes chopping the forest down, burning the forest down. Any other way of removing the forest is a bad thing. We need the forest there to trap the carbon into itself. Now let's go to the next question. When humans create landfills, they store a lot of trash that people produce. Within the landfill, a lot of methane, that's CH4, is released into the atmosphere. Does this contribute to the carbon in the air or remove carbon in the air? So within the landfill, a lot of methane is released. We're actually contributing to the carbon in the air when we do landfills. We're contributing to the carbon in the air because we are releasing methane into the air through our landfills. And again, these are methods in which we increase the carbon in the air. On the previous question, we saw that we could cut down forests or burn them down. And then for the example of the landfill, just having all that trash there creates methane. Sometimes we even burn trash, and burning the trash releases even more carbon into the air. So these are just a couple methods on how we release carbon back into the air. Make sure that you take notes on them and think about it. What are some other ways that we can release carbon dioxide or just carbon in general back into the air? What are things that we do? Things that release it in large quantities. So not breathing out, but things like burning down forests or burning trash. What else could we do? Anyway, guys, that's it for this section. So I will see you guys at the next section. Bye now.